Greg here for Party Foul. I got Scott behind the camera, and I'm going to talk about the middle game. We did previous videos. You can look them up on our website or check them out. The first one was called Deployment. Frank covered that one, and I call that sort of like your initial plan. I did another video called Opening Moves, and that's how you develop your plan. And now we're going to talk about the exciting part, the middle game, the time when you get to execute your plan. So first, what characterizes the middle game? This is a concept that I kind of took from chess strategy. They call it connecting the rooks. And what happens in chess is that when all of your back pieces have been deployed, like your bishops and your knights and stuff like that, and your castle, and your rooks are now connected by an open line, that's kind of when they say, or one of the ideas is that that's a good indication that the middle game has started. And I look at that in terms of War Machine is that your table position has become solidified. And that means that your battle group is in position or has been committed. Your key models are in position. Your pieces have become fully engaged. Now that's not to say that they're fighting, but they are at least in a position to aggressively threaten, and they are committed to completing your strategic plan. And also finally, just like in chess, where at the beginning of the middle game, the king's position has been solidified, your war noun position becomes more solidified. And that can vary depending on the type of war noun that you're using, but a lot of times it starts to become evident as to sort of what sort of zone your caster might be trying to dominate or what sort of strategic position they might try to be. 90% of games are decided in the middle game. Poor positioning, attrition, or scenario advantage all give strong advantages. And if you haven't lost in the opening moves to assassination, and you haven't like played your war noun very carelessly, 90% of the games are going to be decided right then and there in the middle game through attrition and model placement. The middle game is when the attack begins. It's the execution of your strategy. And strategy is something that you're supposed to sort of decide at the beginning of the game, and develop it during your opening moves and that type of thing. And that's whether or not you're going to be aiming for assassination or scenario strategy win. And are you going to be dominating a certain zone or trying to control a certain flag, that type of thing. Okay, so 2, signs you're in the middle game. Pieces are being exchanged. That's a good sign that you're in the middle game. And it's not just like the opening moves where a couple of shots are fired or somebody uses an arc node to take out a key piece or something like that. The models are being exchanged. Attrition is being done. 2, scoring has begun. So you're in a turn 2. And 3, you're in the middle game if there's no credible assassination angle on your Warhound. And I say credible in meaning that there's not a really good chance of assassination. You've placed your Warhound safely. It would take a Hail Mary type of shot for them to take out your Warhound. If there's a credible assassination threat, then you've probably already pushed into the end game. So 3, what should you focus on in the end game? First off, you should continue your strategy. Rarely is it good doctrine to shift your strategic emphasis unless you wish to progress to the end game. Flexibility is good, but a strategic shift almost always indicates progression to the end game. And that's sort of saying like you're working on a particular scenario game plan, or you're attritioning to develop a scenario game plan, and you realize that this isn't working, and you're going to shift, and that shift usually ends up being towards an assassination angle. If you shift and try to change your scenario play, that can work, but it's usually indication of a sign of weakness and that you're actually losing the middle game. Second thing that you should focus on is gaining an attritional advantage, and that's what a lot of good players do, and that's what they're trying to do during the piece exchange. They're trying to take out enemy key pieces and not lose their key pieces, or if they're going to exchange heavies, try to do it on an advantage. I know that I played a game recently against Epic Hexeris with my Aurora list, and she only has 1 heavy in her list, and I guess a lot of people that play against that think that if they take my heavy, that I won't have enough power to remove all of their heavies. And this guy used it with Mullet Karn. He got him up there with mobility and side steps and beatbacks and stuff like that. And he destroyed my monitor. And then during my feat turn, I took Mullet Karn and did about 3/4 damage to a Sentry with Aurora under her feet. And for me, that was an excellent piece exchange. Mullet Karn's like an 11-point model, the monitor's an 8-point model, plus I got a pile of damage on the Sentry. And plus, with Mullet Karn off the table, he's got a lot of assassination threat. Third thing that you should focus on is scenario presence or scoring if that's part of your strategic plan. You don't want to give up free scenario points. You want to make your opponent always have to work hard to get scenario points, especially if they can manage to get a domination in there or something like that. Because getting two or three CPs puts you in a very, very difficult scenario position. So you don't want to give up free CPs. Fourth thing you should focus on is keep your opponent uncomfortable and create difficult questions. Making them uncomfortable means that you're going to exude threat into certain areas of the table so that they don't want to move key models or they're worn out into that place. And creating difficult questions is having abilities or table position so that, likewise, they don't want to position themselves to dominate or control certain areas. And finally, the last thing that you should focus on in the middle game is your war down safety. If you're going to try to move up your war down for an early domination or something like that, and you're concerned about it, I know that I watched a game recently where an Epic Morgul player tried to sneak up and get a free CP or two, and he didn't have Safeguard on him, and his opponent two-handed threw something at Morgul, and then he was just easy meat. So if you're going to try to move up and get a scenario advantage, make sure that your war down is safe. During the middle game, war down safety is almost paramount. You don't want to offer up any credible assassination threat, or your opponent is going to always have the option to progress to the end game. So those are the things that you should focus on. Oh, sorry, there's one more thing. Sustaining an anchor. A heavy or a key piece will be needed if the game goes long to finish it with. Make sure you have a substantial piece to threaten the center of the board, or the opponent's caster is key to winning. So threatening your opponent's caster is key to winning. You can do that with your own caster if you're a strong sort of melee caster or a strong spell assassination caster, but it's good to have a heavy or a key piece to threaten the key areas of the board and the opponent's war down. Sustaining that anchor is important. Don't throw away your heavies unless you're doing an exchange that's key or an exchange that's preferable. Okay, so 4, evaluating the middle game during the middle game. This is important because there's going to have to come a point when you realize you're going to have to progress to your end game strategy. So it's important to ask yourself a number of questions at the beginning of your turn. I'm going to call these state questions. These are the table state questions. There's 3 of them. A, do I have a credible assassination opportunity? B, do I have an opportunity to win on scenario? C, do I have enough clock left to continue the middle game? If the answer to A or B is yes, that means you have a credible assassination opportunity or you have an opportunity to win on scenario, then you need to evaluate your opportunity risk. If the answer to C is no, then you need to immediately progress to the end game. If the answer to all these questions is no, then you need to ask yourself more questions. So I'll just go over that again really quickly because it's a lot of stuff right there. If you have a credible assassination opportunity, then you have to evaluate your opportunity risk. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, I think. But that's, you have to evaluate your clock, you have to evaluate your opponent's strength, what you feel like your odds of winning the long game are. But if there's credible assassination opportunity and the answer is yes, then you have to think, do I go to the end game? Do I have an opportunity to win on scenario? If the answer is yes, then you're probably going to want to progress to the end game. Do I have enough clock left to go to the middle game? If the answer is no, then you need to find an end game solution very, very soon, because clock can run you down, and the less clock you have, the less options you have. Okay, so if you answered no, then you have to ask yourself the following questions. A, will your opponent have a credible assassination opportunity the next turn? B, will my opponent win on scenario the next turn? And C, will my opponent have enough clock left to continue the game? If the answer to A and B is yes, then you need to evaluate your opportunity risk for progressing to the end game immediately. That means that if you're going to be in a bad position with your caster, or your opponent has a very, very real chance of winning on scenario, is this the time where you have to go to the end game, where you have to try for your assassination? If the answer to C, that's if my opponent has enough clock left, is no, if he's low on clock, then war down safety and scenario presence needs to become a priority. It's important to recognize that the middle game is frequently only 2 or 3 turns in length. I can't stress that enough. As a new player, you have to realize that there's different phases to this game. You have your opening moves, which are turn 1 and turn 2. The middle game is only 2 or 3 turns that you have to sort of like do this attrition. I mean, there are exceptions to this, but 2 or 3 turns is all you're going to get to attrition and try to gain a scenario advantage. After that, it's going to be end game time. Okay, so you have to be ready for that end game. Past this point, players will not have sufficient pieces left to sustain an attritional game, and they will be compelled to commit their battle group and or anchor pieces. Be aware that these 2 or 3 turns are all you will get to set an endgame plan in motion, and that's why having a strategic goal is so important. It's very difficult to cobble an endgame together when you've been flying by the seat of your pants. Models won't be in the right positions, key pieces may have been lost, or you may have insufficient time remaining on your clock. So, both those questions, the questions that you ask yourself and the questions that you ask about your opponent's table state, they're exactly the same. Assassination, scenario, clock. Those are the ways you win. So you have to ask yourself, do I have those opportunities? Do my opponent have those opportunities? And then you have to evaluate your opportunity risks. So, 5. How to win the middle game. The game is not won per se in the middle game, but the middle game sets the groundwork for the end game, where the game is won. That said, 90% of games are decided in the middle game, so it is extremely important to have an understanding of what you can accomplish in the middle game. A lot of this has to do with knowing your models and your opponent's models while maintaining scenario awareness, but 4 general points can sum up the general objectives in the middle game, and these are how you win the middle game. 1. Where there is potential for attack and scoring, do so. That doesn't mean to make a charge just because it's an available charge. Your opponent may be tempting you to make a charge to try to trade up. But this game rewards aggressive behavior, rewards the attacker, it rewards the person that has the initiative. So if you have a potential to attack or score, you should attempt to do so. 2. If you have no potential for attack or scoring, focus on improving your position by maneuver, partial clearance, or threatening zones, objectives, flags, and key models. So if you feel that that trade is not going to be worthwhile, reposition or try to offer your opponent a more preferable trade. 3, remove options or restrict your opponent as much as possible at times. You want to limit your opponent's options while maximizing your options during the middle game. The only time you should disregard these guidelines is when you are progressing to the end game, and you should only do that when you are prepared to end the game. So that's the middle game. The middle game, in my opinion, is a lot of jockeying. It's the most important part of the game. It's also very important to set it up. It's the most important part of the game in terms of like gaining an attritional advantage or scenario advantage so that you can set up an end game. And I'll talk more about the end game, but the end game is where you're going to force your opponent to make a bad decision or force your opponent to commit to a decision that will give you an advantage. So that's the middle game. Enjoy.
Touching David. I said, look at you with your paint or your party color.
I could wear my lucky hat.
What the hell's that?
It's my lucky hat.
I can't frame it, so no.
Okay. I beat Tom wearing that.
Why were you wearing that? Did you
car.
need the luck to beat Tom?
Apparently, I went and killboxed myself.
Hold on,
I was like, oh, hey, I didn't move my caster.
Apparently that's a thing?
Apparently that's a thing.
I guess we better...
Fucking goddamn group. They don't shut up.
Oh man, I missed so many messages.
Oh, it's all about tables now and stuff. Boring, boring, boring.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Are you recording? Yeah. Oh, jeez. I really want to edit this.
So easy to... I might have left your nipple rubs in, I don't remember.
Oh, shut up. With the auto fire one?
I don't know what you were talking about, but you were rubbing your titties and I was like,
whatever. Randomly insert that into various videos.